Kasan 68 is a war game that I acquired in a peculiar way. I had bought the game Time Stories on eBay, not even a war game, and when I got Time Stories in the mail, there was in the box together with that game this game here, and I thought, was that a mistake? No, it's a freebie. Wow, thank you, anonymous eBay seller or seller whose name I do not know. Thank you for sending me this game. I don't know if you knew that I do like war games, and actually that I even like games in this line here. This is a game by Decision Games in their folio series of games. Games that are small, portable, easy to learn, easy to play, and also very affordable. In my case, it was super affordable, but even if you're buying your own copies, it shouldn't be too expensive. They come in Ziploc bags. From the point of view of components, they look nice enough, nothing spectacular, but good quality, which again is pretty good value for the money. Kasan 68, a war game about the homonymous Vietnamese War, and also something interesting, a game that is fully solitaire. There are the games in the Folio series which are solitaire friendly, so you can play both sides to the best of your possibilities and skills. This one is fully solitaire. You, the player, are controlling the Allied forces, and then there is an AI represented by a simple but effective deck of cards representing the actions of the communist forces. Let me show you how the game works. This is the map for the game. It is printed on paper, not even particularly thick paper, but it works. It is serviceable and nothing fancy, but it does what it needs to do. As other maps of mini games by Decision Games, this one is structured as a point-to-point map. You have a turn marker, hooray, that you put on the turn track on turn 9. Actually, calling it turn track is a little bit of a misnomer, even though it does say turn everywhere and the rules refer to it as a turn track. It is easier to think of it as a political track. In fact, you will not move the turn marker automatically each turn, but there will be game effects that will be moving the turn marker, the so-called turn marker. I like to think of it as a political marker, up on that track or down. A lot of your actions will move it down, and sometimes you recover because in many cases you do not want the turn marker to reach turn 1. Turn 1 marks the end of the game, marks, I believe, if I understand correctly, a point where the political situation is such that the operations end or are interrupted and the action of the game is evaluated at that point, you see how you have been doing. There's also another way of ending the game earlier, which is if you lose control of the base or the fire base of Kasan, then that's bad for you. You lose the game immediately. If the game reaches until the end of the game, until turn 1, then you simply count victory points based on locations that you control on the map and other factors, and at that point you total the number of victory points that you have. You may still experience a defeat, but at least not as catastrophic as if you have an immediate defeat. Or you may experience 2 levels of victory. There may be a minor victory, tactical victory, or a larger victory. If you survive it until the end, you didn't lose the base and you're occupying some important areas on the map. Units are represented by these counters, which are good, average. I mean, they're thick enough, not too much. They look good enough. They do what they're supposed to do. And the green counters, green represent the units that you will be controlling, and of course red counters represent the communist units that you're fighting. So the green counters are the allies that you control. You have a garrison that will go in Kasan at the beginning of the game, and it will stay there because it has a movement factor of 0. As for the values on the counters, the number on the left represents the firepower, the number on the right represents movement. Here units only have firepower. So they will be placed on the board. The communists, some of them will start on the map. Some, I mean, in areas that you also can travel to, and some of your enemies will start in these areas here, which are impassable for allied units. You simply cannot go there, and they will move in and do bad stuff to you. Your units will start mainly around this area, with a unit starting here. As you can see, you have armor, you have fire cavalry, you have sky cavalry, you have infantry, you have, well, traditional units. Now, the engine of the game is driven by these two decks of cards. One deck is used by you and one deck represents the actions of the enemies. These cards are all available to you. You don't need to draw them. You look at them and you select one at the beginning of each turn. The card also tells you if the card is removed from play after you use it, or if you can recycle it, if you can reuse it later. So some one-time benefits after a while will not be available anymore. As you can see here, there is a number that indicates how the card affects the position of the turn marker. So some cards will make you, many cards will make you lose turns, plus other game effects will also make you lose turns. From time to time you're able to recover turns. What happens, you play the card and you simply implement the effect. The effects may be that you're able to bring in some reinforcements, that you're able to do some extra stuff, that you get a benefit, an advantage for that turn. But it is not exactly card-driven game, because you can still perform actions without a card specifically, meaning you don't need an action to a card to activate units. After you played your card and you resolve the events described on it, you resolve the effects, you can move any and all of your ground units, and you can move them simply up to their movement allowance, which is again the number printed on the right. So you move them from point to point, from connection to connection. Enemy units will be on the map, but they will be face down, and when you enter an area with an enemy unit, you have to stop. So they will be face down, you don't know exactly who they are, you know that they don't like you very much, and enemy units will be revealed once you enter the area in which they are. After you conducted movements, you do not resolve ground combat immediately. You have an air phase in which you can assign air units to areas on the map. So you take them from your pool, that will be here, there will be a pool of allied air units available. You take them here and you place them on the map. It may be that by placing them you're also revealing new units that were still face down on the board, because you can send air units by themselves or in support of land ground operations. So you have placement of air units in case the enemy has anti-aircraft units, such as this one. Then those units get to take a shot of your air units, and then your air units that are still where they're supposed to, they haven't been destroyed by anti-aircraft fire, get to attack. So basically you have ground movement, then you resolve possible air operations, and then finally you resolve ground combat between enemy units that are still in the same area, in the same space, like in that case. After you use your air units, they go to this box here, allied air units, and there is a small table there that you will use later to roll to determine for each unit if the unit goes back to being available, so it goes back to that box, or if the unit stays there and you need to roll for it next turn to determine when exactly the unit will be available. So, as for combat, each combat starts, ground combat starts with determining if there is a side that has a tactical superiority. So you roll a die for each side, one for yourself and one for them, and some units have this white arrow here that indicates that they are elite units, and elite units have a +1 on the roll on tactical superiority. We can also think of it as initiative. Once you determine who has the tactical superiority, you place the enemy units in order, in a line, from strongest to weakest, and then you also organize your own units in any order that you want. Then, starting with the side that has tactical superiority, you roll an attack for them against the opposite side. In this case, suppose that they have initiative, then they roll and they attack me, then I get to roll and attack them. So each unit attacks sequentially and non-simultaneously. And when you inflict hits, they have to be inflicted on the first enemy in the enemy line. That would be the leftmost unit. You cannot attack a unit if there are units to the left of that one. But if the units before then have been destroyed or retreated somewhere else, then you can inflict damage there. And since combat is sequential, not simultaneous, it may also be that some units will not get to fire at all in the combat. They will be eliminated or retreated before they get to do anything. For each unit that is attacking, you roll a number of dice, d6s, equal to the firepower. So this unit will roll 2 dice, and then of course, if this unit is still there, we'll get to roll 4 dice. And then you simply compare the results with the results on the battle results table. So armor firing the ground units will use this column here. Other ground units, all air units use this column, and anti-aircraft units use that column. As you can see, 1, 2, or 3 is always a miss, and then other results may be retreat or a loss of a unit or step. It depends. If it's a 1-step unit, then losing a step means also losing a unit. It's pretty simple, it's pretty counterintuitive, as you can see. Since we're here, we also have a terrain effect chart, which tells you who wins tactical superiority, that is initiative, depending on the terrain. There are a couple of other interesting effects. For example, if you're fighting against communist forces in hills or in jungles, their retreat result against them turns into a break-off. That is, instead of retreating them, you remove them from the map. They're temporarily removed from gameplay, but then later you will roll on the random placement table that determines where they need to be put back. So they're not eliminated, they simply disappear from the map and reappear somewhere else, which maybe is not what you would like them to be. I think it's a very simple but pretty effective way of simulating the chaos of the Vietnam theater of operations, the unpredictability of small guerrilla groups moving around and, again, disappearing from somewhere and popping up somewhere else. Maybe it's not exactly the same people, but it simulates, in any case, the unpredictability of enemy movements in a guerrilla situation. I think this is mainly what there is here for your own actions. So select a card, resolve the actions, gain the benefits usually, move, resolve your operations if you have any. You probably will, because their power is pretty important here. Resolve ground combat, you're done. Then you need to resolve the actions of the enemies. And to do so, you simply draw a card from this deck and you resolve the action. Actually, since we're talking about combat, one important detail. Once everybody has attacked once, if you still have forces of both sides in an area, then you repeat firing, you repeat attacking until one of the two sides is completely eliminated or the units of that side have retreated, or a combination of the above. So you simply keep firing until there are only units on one side in a space where there was a battle at the beginning. Once you resolve that for all ground combats, again, the opponents get to act. You draw a card and it's super self-explanatory. You resolve the actions there. As you can see, there is also a number here which may indicate an adjustment in the turn track. In this case, there's an adjustment. Here are variable possible adjustments and then some automatic adjustments to the turn track. As you can see, it's really self-explanatory. In this case, you replace, you eliminate the communist units, and then you're told about the units that move, in which case all communist units move. In other cases, only some will move, depending on the position in which they are. They're trying to kill you, of course, to destroy you, to weaken your morale, and to advance towards the main firebase that they're trying to take from you. So you continue playing until the end of the game, either as determined by an immediate catastrophic defeat in case you lose the main base, or until the game reaches turn 1, and at that point you count victory points to determine how you have done. So this game definitely has the advantage of all the other decision games in the Folio series, in that it is portable, simple, playable, and it's good to have small, portable solitaire games, because these are perfect as travel games. You're going on a trip where you do not know if you'll find somebody to play, you're going to a conference or something like that, then ta-da, you have a game that you can play in your hotel room. It's just a little too big, in my opinion, to play it on an airplane, also because you need to have the combat table handy. but still you do not need a large space. But really, there are many games that are marketed as play on airplanes, but really few ones really fit that bill. This one doesn't, but can fit many other bills, can be played in many other opportunities and cases. Something important about decision games, you may know about this, the rules are pretty inconsistent. The quality of the rules is pretty inconsistent. Some of the rules are very high quality, some of the times the games on this publisher are very difficult to learn because the rules are full of loopholes and unclear, ambiguous terminology. Here there is that one big typo, or in any case inaccuracy, about the fact that the rules tell you that you should change the number of the turn that you're playing automatically by 1 turn every turn. Not exactly, it depends on the cards that are played. So really, I wish that that track had been called like political track or support track or something like that, because that would be less misleading. But apart from that, other than that, the game is pretty playable. If there are any ambiguities or cases where you're unsure, it's very easy to make judgment calls. The game is not complicated to start with, so actually you shouldn't encounter too many gray areas. And what is important, of course, is that the game is entertaining. Having clear rules and a portable game would be of very little value if the game was not good. It's a small game, so in that sense it's not going to be an epic experience, but it has a certain degree of historical flavor. I like how the two sides play in very different ways. Especially I like how the communist forces disappear from one side of the map and appear on the other side. Not that I enjoy per se, because they're my enemies and they're making things tough for me, but I enjoy to see that way of capturing the theme effectively and with such a simple solution. And yet I also like the fact that in fact you cannot overstretch yourself too much, precisely because due to the system of connections and on the board, well, it's hard to cover a large area. It's hard to create a very solid wall of defense around your main base if you are trying to extend too much and to have that wall to be too large. Then sooner or later some of your enemies will be able to find a hole to punch a hole through your defenses, and of course then it can get pretty bad and you're regrouping, etc, etc. So you do have that sense, which I think is historical, of frustration, that you can win single fights, but it always seems tough to really kind of put a nail in the coffin of the opponent, put your flag on the battlefield and determine that the battlefield is clear. It's very tough because if you extend too much, then the opponents can get close to you, and if you otherwise you stay too close, then you get cramps. Stacking limits can be problematic, and you get of course the overwhelming sense of being surrounded by a lot of units that in that case of course can come in large numbers. The opponent can pile up units against you. So I like that. I think that the AI works pretty well. It does have a good mix of different actions, from reinforcing to taking care of showing the effect of political events outside of the battlefield, to simply regulating movement of the enemy troops towards your bases, towards other objectives. It's not the most sophisticated AA that there is, but it works. It works enough for the small map, for the small number of connections and areas that you have. I found the enemies moved and controlled by the system to be fun enough to attack and challenging enough to defend against and to have to deal with. So overall, a pretty good Solitaire. Simple, light, enjoyable. I found a good degree of theme in it, while not being, again, very deep or super complex game. It is a game that does feel like an historical war game. It does feel like a system that is able and manages to convey some historical flavor while also presenting an interesting gameplay challenge. Kasan 68, definitely a fun, entertaining game, and I think that I'll look more into other games in the series. The system is called, well, the Folio series has many different lines and subsystems. This one is called Cold War Blitz. I'll look more into this system because, especially now that I learned the basic rules, I think it's going to be even simpler to learn new games in the system, not that actually learning the system and then the special rules is particularly complicated. This is still an introductory product, of course, but still, even better to be able to jump into a new game is always fun, especially when the game that I played in this line already is entertaining. Then I'm excited to see what other games in this line the publisher will come up with. Kasan 68, simple, fun, entertaining game about the Vietnam War.